right, thanks for the introduction, Ben, and thanks for inviting me. And if I had known I was following up a comedian, I would have said no. Makes it very challenging. So I got to change things up. I got to think on the fly here and come up with a new introduction, okay? I had something that was kind of dry and boring. So what I'm going to say, it goes back beyond 1999 to the summer of 1984. I was a 10-year-old. I was at a campground in Bayfield, Ontario with my parents, my older brother. My parents said, get down to the pool, because my brother and I, 10 and 12, what we do, we're fighting and ruining their life. So we go and we hang out and we swim and we're playing in the pool, and I do what a younger brother does. I go into the water and I open my eyes, and I'm either going to hit him somewhere or I'm going to pants him. I'm not sure, but I did one of the two for sure, probably both. And I realized I made two mistakes when I got out of the water. One, I pantsed or hit my older brother, who's much bigger than me. And two, is I opened my eyes in a heavily chlorinated public pool. And I came out of the water, and my eyes were burning, and he's coming at me. I'm like, Mike, no, I'm blind. And he's like, yeah, right, goosh. And I'm like, no, seriously, I'm blind. And he's a caring older brother, so he basically, like, oh, wow, I was blind, I couldn't see. He walked me back to the campground. I couldn't see my eyes, I'm crying. My mom's like, you're fine, it's just chlorine, and go back to the pool. So we probably went back to the pool. And I'd love to say that at that point is when I made it a lifelong mission to save all 10-year-old children from burning their eyes in chlorinated pools, and I've been passionately pursuing natural swim ponds ever since, but that's a lie. So. The truth, though, is out of college, rather than lawn alternative landscapes, my first obsession in college was actually straw bale houses. And I had a college project that was basically envisioning an entire subdivision of straw bale houses with solar panels, with fruit trees, and with turf-free landscapes. And the turf-free landscapes stuck the most and became the business. Otherwise, it could very well be us on the same side of this right here. So, anyways, turf-free landscapes led to all sorts of stuff we do, and I'm going to start speeding up and getting into the swim ponds. So, when I discovered the natural swim ponds, which would have been about 15 years ago, that incident didn't lead me to discovering them, but I certainly remembered that as a kid because it was scarring both from the beating I took and the burning eyes. So, there's the background. Okay, so fun stuff. I had hair at one point too. So, all right. So I'm going to start blasting through because I'm going to get timed out before I know it. So the world of natural swimming pools and natural swimming in North America. I like to start with this. This is a reduced version of a 1-hour version of this that I've done for the landscape trades. And basically, we entered the Wild West with natural swimming in North America because is a vast debate. Is it a pool or is it a pond? And the equipment that can be used, how it can be treated, all this sort of stuff. It's the battle's actually raging on, and I have fear that it's going to lead to some problems and some serious regulation and probably lawsuits at some point in time. So there's even debate about what you call them: natural swimming ponds, natural swimming pools, recreation ponds, ecological pools, and so on. And a lot of contractors, particularly throughout the U.S., like to say it's a recreation pond, because then we can just say it's a pond, and that's it. And now they're not following pool codes, electrical codes, whatever, even though they're actively promoting it for swimming. So there's something to be very careful about there. So it goes from anything that are very highly engineered biological filtration systems to DIY, hole in the ground, filled with water, on Facebook groups, and people saying, here's my natural swimming pond, and everything in between. So basically what they have in common is to differentiate a couple things. It's an artificial liner and it's self-contained. So this is the main thing that makes it a natural swimming pond versus being a pond, like a rural pond. So we often get inquiries from people who have a pond in the country and they say, I want to turn this into a natural swimming pond. It's like, it's not the same thing. We can make that more swimmable, but it's not a natural swimming pond. So the definition is that it's artificially lined, self-contained, uses biological process to clarify and purify the water, and typically the swimming zone is separated from the regeneration or plant zone by some form of barrier or a separate vessel. And these are the defining elements that make it a natural swimming pond. There's my backyard. There's my kids frog hunting and sniffing around. So So this I basically touched on. So the pond industry is jumping very big into the natural swim pond trend because it's growing leaps and bounds in the last couple of years. It's becoming all the rage. And most, if not all, equipment from the pond industry is not rated for use in water intended for human immersion. So this is just one of the things to be aware of. So we'll get into the types of filtration systems. I'm going to keep this pretty high level just to give an overview of swim ponds. I say we could talk for a day, but just like any of your expertise areas, you could talk forever, so we'll go pretty quick. Basically, you're having two different zones, your swimming zone and your regeneration zone, or your planted filtration area. Okay. So the earliest swim ponds in Europe, and some of these still exist, they were basically no mechanics whatsoever. A big line pond and large areas of planting, and are basically relied on the wind to move the water between the plants and the swimming area. And that's what would clean the water. And I think they were successful to a degree. I mean, if you're like a real rustic experience, the water will take a while for it to balance. It could take several years. It'll go through periods throughout the year where it's cloudier or more clean and it could settle out. And there'll be a lot of debris that will build up on the bottom that could either be vacuumed out or you just don't go down there and just don't stir it up. So I think European taste and sensibilities are a little bit different than North American, and they will tend to tolerate that a lot more than us here. Here's another one that's sort of happening out there in the world, a lot in the DIY, and it's sort of like a next step, but very, very, very energy efficient. And it's using basically a 100-watt air compressor to create a series of airlift pumps, which are basically injecting the air into the bottom of a pipe. As the air rises, it pulls water with it, and that pipe is connected to slotted pipe that is buried under gravel around the planted zone. So it's pulling this gentle current of water through the planted zone that's doing the filtration from the rest of the pond. So it'll do a better job of cleaning than relying just on the wind, and it also adds oxygen, but you're still going to get a lot of variances in water quality and clarity throughout the season, and a high load of debris building up on the bottom, which you see a little picture on the left there. That's a pool vacuum in 6 inches of fluffy debris. So the same deal, if you don't go down and don't kick it up, it's going to be a nice swimming experience. But again, North American sensibility is a little bit different than that. So this is sort of taken from the pond industry, which is taken from basically old sewage treatment technology. Is the idea of an external wetland filter. It's just an upflow filter where the water percolates upwards through layers of various sized gravel, which allow beneficial bacteria to colonize the gravel and eat nutrients and feed the plants. So type of thing that's been used in sewage treatment for a long time. And if anyone ever saw like those old solar ecology systems, the type of thing that was at Body Shop where they would do it kind of downwards from a washroom, like a blackwater treatment, right? And it's sort of the same type of idea, just on a much larger scale and not as dirty of water. The regeneration zone filter, so this is the most common throughout Europe and most of what we've done to date. It's basically taking that wetland and surrounding the swim zone with that. So you're separating your swimming area like the top left or the bottom, or you can see it where it's partially built on the top right. So you're having a bare line or swimming area that could have some bottom draws or at least can be vacuumed off, and then the planted gravel bed filtration area surrounding that, but within the same vessel. And then when you get to a little bit more advanced, and what we're finding more people here want is a cleaner swimming experience, a bit more similar to a swimming pool, but with non-chemical water. So biological filtration, but they don't want the sediment, they don't want their feet to feel like they're at the beach, and when you kick the bottom, it get dusty up to your thighs. Like, you want it pretty clean. And this is employing external filtration systems. So the top left is one that we built. It looks complex, but it's really not. It's a pump, it's a UV sterilizer, and it's a filter, which is from the koi or aquarium, like large commercial aquarium industry. So it's a biological filter rather than a sand filter. And it does the same thing as what the external wetland does. It's creating heaps and heaps of surface area for beneficial bacteria to colonize, while it's also grabbing debris that can then be backwashed and flushed out. And we'll typically put that on a variable speed pump that you can ramp up in hotter parts of the summer and slow it down other times of the year. On the right is, oh, I'm going to go back. The right is, we had just had 2 of our crew down in Oklahoma on a swim pond build on a large, extensive, really advanced pond. And it's just taking that same idea, but taking it to the max. So it adds UV, double filtration, and then it's adding an ozone unit to hyperoxygenate the water and also be a bit of an oxidizer for any debris or harmful pathogens that can be within the swimming zone. And they're dialing that to the point where it will be effective at killing what they want, but not too dialed up that it nukes everything in the water. So this, again, is a system that is both trying to achieve the cleanliness that people want, the physical cleanliness, but also ensuring the safety against harmful pathogens, E. coli, total coliforms, all these things that can live in stagnant, nasty water. So. And you get into some more advanced European systems. These aren't really happening here. We're going to start looking into this and potentially partnering with a European company where you're doing a completely external biological living pool system that doesn't rely on the use of any plants. So you can have more of a conventional looking pool with an external biological filtration system, but it's a chemical-free water experience that's more akin to being in a conventional backyard pool, but without the burning eyes and raging brother. So there's a lot of avoidance happening in the pond industry by calling things recreation ponds. You're talking about bylaws and fences and codes. And it's really a township by township basis. So looking at the top right photo, this is out in the country. They're on 100 acres outside of Markdale area. And when you approach the township and say we're building a big pond, they're like, okay, we don't have a pond bylaw. You build a pond. So you build a pond. And then the choice comes as the designer or the contractor. It's fine then, okay, we don't need a permit, but we still want to follow all these safety codes for swimming slope zones, jump heights, electrical, everything else, and make sure the water's safe. Anytime you're anywhere with any form of neighbors anywhere nearby, it's just pool bylaw. Fencing, it's really just about fencing anyhow. Fencing and that your electrical hookup is appropriate and proper and written, signed off on. So. Here's some resources. Yeah, sure.
Because I've spoken to you before, but I think it's important for people to know the ratio of open water to planted area.
Yeah, so we could go on some of that. The original European ponds would have been 100%. You know, have this much swim area, the exact same amount planted, no mechanics or anything. When you're doing the external regeneration type planting or the wetland filter, they typically talk about going 30%. So if you have a 100 square foot swimming area, you need 30 square feet of planted zone. Now that can be increased for safety and higher water quality and supplemented with the external filtration system right to the point where you get the living pools that they don't need it at all. There's so much external filtration and other mechanics built onto it that it doesn't need the planted zone at all.
Mm-hmm. How much interaction of the owner do they need? Like as in cleaning?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Can you say the question?
Yeah, how much maintenance, how much interaction, right? So again, this depends a lot on personal taste and personal preference. So if you're real picky, it's going to be as much as a pool. You're going to vacuum it, skim it, empty the skimmers, all this stuff all the time. What we find is that since it, especially one that looks like a natural pond, if it looks like a natural pond, it can get away with being far more neglected and still look good. And my backyard is an example of that. It's heavily neglected. I'm too busy. My kids don't care. But it still looks amazing. You come in the backyard, you're like, oh my God, this looks amazing. I'm like, oh geez, I haven't cleaned it. There's filth, the bottom, it's full of leaves, but it looks like it belongs. And if that amount of leaf and debris was in a swimming pool, you'd think it was derelict and neglected, right? So it's a bit personal preference, and then it comes down to design. The higher the level of cleanliness desired, then the more mechanics, the more return points, the more water flow, the more skimming, the more reducing chance for everything to settle. So you can catch it, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Sorry, what is the,
What's the preferred for the bylaw for
what would we prefer?
the preferred?
You know, for me, it's if you're someone out in the country and you have a river 500 feet away from you, or a natural pond or a lake, and they're going to make you put a fence around this, to me that's kind of insane. You know, if you're anywhere with neighbors, you're insane not to put a fence, right? Mainly say you're out in the country and you have to put a fence around it. It's like, where do you put the fence for it looks good? You put it so far back that you can't see it and you need a kilometer of fence, you bring it up. So in my instance, because I went through this, the township deemed it as a pond because it's a year-round landscape feature. We skate on it. It has fish in it, it has frogs in it. We appreciate it for its beauty. And swimming is almost a secondary function. It's not the primary function. So if it's deemed that swimming is its only and primary function, then they told me, then you have to do the pool bylaw. I laid out all the other things it has a benefit for. It could be, you know, you really stretch it, you go, it could be fire suppression. I'm out in the country where you don't have hydrants, right? It's like, okay, that sounds like a pond and not a pool. So it comes down to the owner, I think, at that point. But then again, it's following all the safety requirements in its slope design, jumping heights, electrical work, everything else, that you don't go cowboy style on that sort of thing. Yeah. I know I can do for 2 minutes. We'll talk a little bit about public pools. I could have added this one in. So we're investigating this a fair bit. Throughout the United States, there's quite a few that are getting into the public or semi-public, like that campground type situation. So we designed a fairly extensive one for, would have been like a high-end RV resort type place in Huntsville. And the township there deemed it to be a pool. So now this falls under Class B semi-public pool. And we're able to meet all the guidelines, except legally in the Ontario Provincial Health Code, there's only allowance for a public or semi-public pool to be chlorine or bromine. It's not even in the laws to have biological filtration. So there's sort of a hiccup here with other ones that will be semi-public or campground. If the township deems it to be a pond, it's Wild West, do what you want. You could fill a hole with liner and an aerator and tell people to go swim in it. If the township deems it to be a pool, it's a 20-page document where you have to meet 200 points, but it fines, right? So at some point, this has to be settled at a provincial level, which happened in Edmonton, where there's a public natural swimming pool, and there's an amendment made to the provincial legislation to allow for biological filtration with this as a test site with heavy testing, weekly, maybe even daily testing for coliforms, nutrient levels, beneficial bacteria, any harmful bacteria, and it's just heavily regulated. So that world will crack open eventually in North America. You go into the States, and most of the time they're deeming them a pond, and they're gunslingers. I mean, it's just in their DNA to go west, you know. But so some of them, like that extensive filtration system, are really doing it right, and some of them are just dropping in pond pumps and building ponds, and eventually there'll be an issue. So, and now my time is up.